Take a moment and slow down. Before you listen with your mind, listen with your heart first. This message may have found you for a reason. It is not just another video passing by on your screen. Something deep inside you has been carrying pain in silence, waiting for answers that never fully came. You have spent so much time staying strong, even when you felt tired inside. You kept moving. You told yourself you were fine. But when the world gets quiet, one person still returns to your thoughts. No matter how hard you try to stay busy, their memory keeps showing up. Maybe you tell yourself you have accepted everything, yet your heart still holds questions that will not go away. Stay with me, because this part matters. Tonight is not about opening old pain again. It is about understanding what was never clearly said. This is not here to pull you backward or make you relive every wound. It is here to offer a different view, one that may finally help you put down the weight you have carried for too long. The person you keep thinking about chose to become involved with someone else. That truth is hard. It may still hurt to admit it, but there is something they have never been able to say honestly. If they could speak without fear, without pride, and without hiding behind excuses, what they would say might surprise you. So pause for one slow breath. Inhale gently. Let it go. Let your body soften for a second. What you are about to hear is not meant to scare you, and it is not meant to force you into believing anything. It is only an invitation to listen with an open mind and an open heart, because some truths arrive quietly before they change everything. There is a reason this message caught your attention. Maybe lately you have been thinking about this person more than usual. Their memory appears without warning, even while you are focused on something else. Maybe you have been feeling emotions that are hard to explain, a mix of sadness, hope, confusion, and longing that seems to rise from nowhere. This message is not asking you to ignore reality. It is not selling false hope, and it is not telling you to hold on to someone who is not showing up. Its purpose is much simpler. It is here to bring clarity to the part of you that has been quietly searching for understanding. The truth is clear. They became emotionally or romantically involved with someone else. That chapter is real, and pretending otherwise helps no one. But what happened was never as simple as it looked from the outside. The silence, the distance, the choices they made, all of it was tied to struggles inside them that they did not know how to face. Their heart has wanted to admit something for a long time, but fear kept blocking the way. They buried their feelings under distractions, avoidance, and choices they believed would make life easier. Instead of facing what they truly felt, they convinced themselves that walking away would solve everything. Deep down, they knew the story was not finished. They just did not know how to face the emotions that followed them everywhere. You probably felt that long before anyone said a word. Your intuition kept whispering that something was off. Even when they smiled, something seemed missing. Even when they said everything was okay, you could feel the distance growing under their words. Even when they acted as if their choices were final, your heart still noticed the hesitation they worked so hard to hide. You saw it in the long pauses before they answered your messages. You felt it when conversations became short, flat, or strangely empty. You noticed the invisible walls that appeared between you with no real explanation. None of those moments made full sense on their own, but together they told a story your heart could not ignore. The hardest part was wondering if they had simply stopped caring. That question likely stayed with you far longer than you wanted. But the answer was never that simple. They did not leave because every feeling vanished overnight. They stepped back because the emotions became too heavy for them to handle. Instead of working through those feelings, they ran from them. For someone who struggles with emotional openness, running can feel safer than staying. That does not erase the hurt they caused. It does not excuse the confusion, the silence, or the pain you had to carry. Those wounds are real, they matter, they deserve to be seen. But understanding why someone acted the way they did is not the same as excusing it. The truth is, they were fighting battles inside themselves that you could not see. Rather than admit they were afraid, overwhelmed, or unsure, They hid behind distance. They told themselves that space would silence what they were feeling. It did not. Those feelings followed them. No matter where they went or who entered their life, the emotions they tried to escape stayed close behind. Some lessons cannot be avoided by walking away. Some connections leave a mark that remains long after the shape of the relationship changes. And now, whether they admit it out loud or only in the quiet corners of their own heart, they are beginning to face the truth they spent so long trying to avoid. Keep listening, because the next part explains more than you may expect. What looked like a clear choice on the outside was often a form of escape on the inside, and that difference changes the meaning of everything. When they entered another relationship, it was not because you suddenly became less important, and it was not because someone else truly took your place. What they were really searching for was relief from feelings they could not understand. They hoped that choosing a different path would quiet the emotions still tied to you. They believed that by moving forward with someone else, the memories, the attachment, and the unfinished feelings connected to you would finally fade. But life rarely works that way. The truth they are only now starting to accept is this: you were never truly replaced. What they really did was delay facing themselves. They postponed dealing with the emotional bond they had with you, believing time and distance would make it disappear. Instead, that choice created consequences they still carry. The emotions they tried to avoid never stopped existing. They simply waited for the moment they could no longer be ignored. Knowing why they chose someone else may not erase your pain, but it can help make sense of what once felt impossible to understand. Their decision was not rooted in deeper love. It came from fear of vulnerability, fear of being fully seen, fear of the responsibility that comes with a real emotional bond. What existed between you touched parts of them that felt unfamiliar. It asked them to grow, to become honest with themselves, and to lower the walls they had spent years building. That kind of connection can feel overwhelming to someone who is not ready to face their own heart. Instead of leaning into something meaningful, they turned toward what felt easier to control. The relationship they chose asked less of them emotionally. It did not force them to face difficult truths or reveal the parts of themselves they kept hidden. On the surface, it offered comfort, routine, and the illusion of peace. But comfort is not the same as fulfillment, and avoiding depth is not the same as happiness. That is where the quiet regret started, even if they did not admit it right away. Even while trying to move on, reminders of you kept showing up in small, unexpected ways. A familiar laugh would bring back yours. A simple conversation would remind them of the way you once connected. Quiet moments became the hardest, because silence has a way of pulling hidden emotions back into the light. Without even meaning to, they started comparing. Not because they wanted to cling to the past, but because real connections leave a deep imprint that is hard to erase. The more they compared, the more one truth became impossible to ignore. What the two of you shared was not something that could simply be rebuilt with another person. Every relationship carries its own energy, and some bonds leave a mark that does not disappear just because someone walks away. In time, they began to understand that what existed between you was not ordinary. It carried honesty, emotional intensity, and a kind of understanding that could not be replaced by convenience. That realization came much later than it should have. By the time they saw its value, many chances had already been lost. And then another feeling quietly entered their daily life: guilt. It does not always show on the outside, but it follows them more often than they let anyone see. When the noise of the day fades, their thoughts become harder to silence. In those quiet hours, memories return on their own. They replay conversations they once brushed aside. They remember moments they barely appreciated at the time. Words you spoke that once seemed small now carry a deeper meaning. There is guilt for leaving without giving you the explanation you deserved. There is guilt for choosing what felt easier instead of choosing honesty. There is guilt for hurting someone whose intentions had been genuine from the start. And once guilt settles in, it does not leave quickly. It lingers, it waits, it keeps asking for truth. With time, they have started to understand how much confusion they left behind. They know you had to create answers for questions they never had the courage to face. Looking back, they can see that you were not asking for perfection. You were asking for openness, steadiness, and truth. That realization weighs on them more than they expected. This guilt does not always arrive in dramatic ways. It hides under busy schedules, forced smiles, endless distractions, and routines made to keep deeper feelings away. From the outside, they may look fine, they may seem settled, but beneath that image is someone who knows certain choices still affect them. No matter how hard they tried to outrun their emotions, those emotions never disappeared. Staying busy did not erase them. Starting over did not remove them. Avoiding difficult feelings only delayed them. The heart has a quiet way of holding what the mind tries to bury, and sooner or later, every ignored feeling asks to be seen. That is the truth they are finally beginning to face. The emotions they tried so hard to silence did not get weaker. If anything, they grew stronger over time. Every feeling they pushed aside remained under the surface, waiting for the moment they could no longer pretend it was gone. You may have asked yourself many times why they did not just tell you the truth. If they felt so much, why stay silent? Why leave you to fill in the blanks? The answer was not a lack of care. It was fear. Not fear of you, but fear of what honesty would force them to confront inside themselves. They knew that if they spoke openly, they would not be able to control what came next. The walls they had built for years would begin to crack. Every hidden emotion would come rushing forward, and they were not sure they had the strength to deal with it. So they chose silence, thinking it was safer, while never seeing the damage silence was quietly creating. They were also afraid of making promises they were not emotionally ready to keep. They knew real honesty creates responsibility. Once certain words are spoken, pretending nothing has changed becomes impossible. That kind of vulnerability felt too heavy for them, so they stayed quiet. There was another reason it was hard for them to open up. They saw something in you that made hiding even harder. You had a way of sensing the truth without needing every detail explained. Even when they tried to act calm, you noticed the hesitation under their confidence. You saw the feelings hidden beneath their words. You understood more than they ever admitted, and that made them uncomfortable because they knew they could not wear emotional masks forever around you. If they became fully honest, there would be no easy return to distance. The connection would demand authenticity, accountability, and courage. At that point in their life, they did not believe they were ready for any of it. So they stayed silent. But silence has its own price. Every unanswered question created more confusion. Every unfinished conversation built more distance. Every truth left unsaid slowly turned into another piece of regret. Over time, they learned something hard but important. Avoiding difficult conversations does not protect people from pain. It often creates deeper wounds than honesty ever would. Then, slowly, something inside them began to change. On the outside, nothing may have looked different. Their routine continued. They smiled when expected. They stayed occupied. Life seemed to move forward, but inside, something shifted in a way they could no longer ignore. Despite the company around them, they began to feel emotionally empty, unseen, unheard, disconnected in ways they could not explain. And in that quiet emptiness, thoughts of you returned, not as simple memory, not as passing nostalgia, but as a truth they had been delaying for far too long. For the first time, they stopped confusing emotional depth with danger. They began to understand that what they felt with you was not chaos. It was not weakness. It was not some unhealthy pull they needed to escape. It was real connection, and they had mistaken it for something threatening only because it asked them to be vulnerable. Only now are they beginning to see the difference. Real bonds do not disappear just because someone ignores them. Distance cannot erase what was genuine. Time cannot remove what truly touched a person's heart. The connection remained there, waiting beneath everything they tried to build on top of it. And if fear no longer controlled their voice, there is something they would want you to hear. They would tell you they believed choosing someone else would make life easier. They honestly thought another relationship would quiet the feelings they could not explain. Instead, they learned that leaving you behind did not bring peace. It created a different kind of emptiness. They would admit that walking away from you eventually felt like walking away from an important part of themselves. They know they hurt you. They know their silence left you searching for answers that should have come from them. They understand that you deserved clarity instead of confusion. And if they could speak with complete honesty, they would want you to know this was never because you lacked value or because you were not enough. It was because your importance frightened them. The depth of what they felt challenged everything they believed about protecting themselves. Rather than meet those emotions with courage, they ran from them, hoping distance would solve what truth was asking them to face. Listen closely here, because this is where many people miss the real meaning. Sometimes a person does not leave because the bond was small. Sometimes they leave because the bond was too real for the version of them that existed then. Whether those words have been spoken aloud or not, they have continued to grow inside them. Each quiet day gives them more room to rise. That inner voice becomes harder to ignore because truth has a way of asking to be acknowledged sooner or later. But this message is not only about what has shifted inside them. Something has changed inside you too. You are not standing in the same emotional place anymore. You are not waiting with the same desperation, the same confusion, or the same dependence that once kept you stuck. You have been reclaiming pieces of yourself that got lost while you searched for answers. And that inner change has created room for a new kind of understanding, one based not on waiting, but on clarity. You have changed in ways you may not even fully see yet. The questions that once kept you awake at night no longer control you the same way. You are no longer measuring your worth by another person's choices. Little by little, you have started remembering who you are outside of this connection. That shift changes everything. When one person begins to heal, the energy between two people changes as well. Even without words, they can feel it. They sense that you are no longer waiting in the same way. The version of you who kept searching for explanations is fading, replaced by someone who values peace over uncertainty. They feel your attention turning back toward yourself instead of staying fixed on them. They sense that you are no longer willing to accept mixed signals, emotional distance, or unanswered questions, and that creates something they did not expect. For the first time, they begin to understand that time does not stand still. The idea of losing you completely no longer feels far away. It feels real. And that reality can shake a person awake more than any speech ever could. Sometimes the moment someone feels your absence is the moment they finally see your value clearly. What surprises them most is not only the regret they feel about what happened between you. It is the person they became while trying to avoid their own emotions. They look back and struggle to recognize the version of themselves that chose fear over honesty. The choices they once defended now leave them with painful questions. Why did they run from something real? Why did they mistake vulnerability for danger? Why did they think silence would protect anyone? Those questions are uncomfortable because they force them to face parts of themselves they spent years avoiding. Real growth is rarely easy. It asks people to look at their mistakes without excuses, and that can hurt. In many ways, losing you became the experience that pushed them toward deeper self-reflection. They may not have wanted those lessons, but they can no longer pretend those lessons are not there. The person they are becoming is beginning to see truths the person they once were refused to face. But as for you, this message is not asking you to stop your life or wait for someone else to make up their mind. It is not asking you to cling to hope or ignore the pain you went through. Its purpose is simpler than that. It is here to remind you of something important. You were never left because you were unworthy of love. You were never abandoned because you lacked something. The depth of your honesty required a level of emotional courage they did not yet have. Sometimes people walk away from the very connection they need most because it asks them to become someone they are not ready to be. That choice speaks to their inner struggle, not your worth. Whether your paths meet again or remain apart, one truth stays the same. You are stronger now than you were before. You survived the unanswered questions. You carried heartbreak without letting it decide your future. You learned that your value does not disappear just because someone else could not recognize it in time. Everything you learned from this experience belongs to you now. The strength you built, the wisdom you gained, and the peace you have started creating cannot be taken away by anyone. Those parts of you were earned through hard nights, heavy thoughts, unanswered questions, and the courage to keep moving even when your heart felt tired. No matter what happens next, that growth is yours. Take one more slow breath and let that sink in. Maybe this is the first time you have allowed yourself to see the whole situation from another angle. Sometimes healing does not begin when the other person changes. Sometimes it begins when you finally understand that your value was never tied to their choice. Through all of this, you showed up with honesty. You were willing to be real even when being vulnerable felt risky. While fear shaped many of their choices, you chose openness instead of hiding. You spoke from your heart when it would have been easier to protect yourself behind emotional walls. That takes courage, even if it did not feel like courage at the time. You loved sincerely. You cared deeply. You gave your feelings without knowing how the story would end. There is nothing weak about that. In truth, it takes great strength to love without pretending, to trust without guarantees, and to stay authentic in a world where many people hide behind pride, fear, or distance. So do not mistake your softness for a flaw. It is one of your strengths. The right people will never see your sincerity as something to run from. They will see it as a gift and meet it with honesty, steadiness, and care. If this is touching something deep in you, stay until the end, because the final truth may be the one your heart most needs to hear. Not every ending is loss. Sometimes an ending is the beginning of seeing yourself clearly again. If life ever brings this person back into your path, you will not be the same person they left behind. The version of you that once waited endlessly for answers has grown. You have learned hard lessons about self-respect, boundaries, and emotional balance. If they return, your choice will no longer come from loneliness or fear of losing them. It will come from clarity. You will ask whether their actions match their words, whether true change has happened, and whether the connection can actually become healthy. That is what growth does. It changes the questions you ask. And if your paths never cross again, your future is still full of possibility. Your happiness was never meant to depend on one person's presence. Your life still holds room for love, peace, meaningful connection, and personal fulfillment. The end of one chapter never means the end of your story. You were never meant to spend years chasing answers from someone who was not emotionally ready to give them. Some answers come through conversation, but others come through your own healing. As you keep growing, many of the questions that once consumed your mind begin to lose their power. Your worth has never been decided by who stayed or who left. Your value existed before this connection, during it, and after it. Nothing another person does can add to it or take it away. One of the deepest forms of closure is not hearing the perfect apology or finally getting every answer you once wanted. Real closure often arrives more quietly. It comes when you stop blaming yourself. It comes when you release the need to understand every detail of the past. Most of all, it comes when you no longer ask whether you were enough. You have always been enough. So keep choosing yourself without guilt. Protect your peace without apology. Set healthy boundaries without fear. Trust your own heart. Value your own well-being. Refuse to settle for love built on uncertainty. And remember this as you move forward. Healing is possible, peace is possible, and the value you carry has been there all along.